Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour and a pleasure to be standing in front of you this evening. Like many of us growing up in the 1960s in New Zealand, all I wanted to do was to play music in a band with my friends, write great songs, record mega-selling albums, tour the world and become rich and famous in the process. At the time, it didn't seem like such a ridiculous dream. Max Merritt had done it, made it look pretty easy. Split Enz had done it big time. My Sex were in the throes of conquering Australia, and of course Dragon, the swaggering, headstrong, all-powerful, mighty, incredible Dragon. Those brilliant melodies, those wonderful harmonies of Todd's, those perfect pop songs. There were many tragedies along the way, of course, for Dragon, but probably the greatest, in my opinion, was the fact that they didn't become the global superstars that their talent destined them to be. I think, in conclusion, it's also significant to remind ourselves that whilst most bands are kind of fortunate to strike gold once, these guys had a second phase to an incredible career which was as equally spectacular as the first. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honour to ask you to salute tonight the mighty Dragon.
Dragon took their name from the I Ching when they formed in New Zealand in 1972.
Our first record contract, the deal was no singles. Didn't want anything under 20 minutes. But then Mark joined and he had more of a pop sensibility.
With 2 albums released and a manager in jail, Dragon left New Zealand lauded as the #1 band in the land.
And we stuck all our gear into these old tea chests, Lipton's tea chests, and went to Sydney Airport.
We got a cab from the airport up to a boarding house in Paddington, and then the girls from the record company said, "See ya."
And we tried to get gigs. It was a bit hard, though, for a while.
Soon after, they convinced noted songwriter and keyboard player Paul Hewson to cross the Tasman to join them.
We sent him a telegram saying, "Come over, it's fantastic, fame and fortune await." And he came over and found 6 people sitting on the carcass of a dead fish in one room.
From then on, Dragon became a mighty pop band with a legendary punk attitude.
In this country, you've got to have fuck you money or fuck you attitude. And it was obvious to us we were never going to get any fuck you money, so we just had the attitude. And people would say, "Smile, come on, it's a photo session." We'd just say, "Nah, fuck you." Our whole thing of surviving was at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, the bouncers would walk down from the lifesaver and say, "The band hasn't turned up, you know, get down there."
I mean, everyone used to start rolling up about 10 and it just went off.
Every time we played, that was quite tumultuous.
You never knew what you were going to get. Could be anything to anyone at any given time.
But they needed hits.
We had a manager called Robert Raymond.
He said, "You can come and practice in the spare room in my office." And after we practiced for about 3 days, he said, "I'm getting really sick of this now. Get in there and write a single."
Their big break came in '76 after they'd had all their equipment stolen and were playing with borrowed gear at a sleazy club in Sydney.
And our payment for playing was like a plate of mince.
I discovered Dragon at the Recovery Wine Bar in Sydney. And there they were, in all their glory. And it was one song after another, after another, after another. All hit songs. I couldn't believe my luck.
There was no, okay, you know, maybe we'll have this guy to produce us. It was like, what? Someone wants to produce us? The CBS machine swung into action and we got on Countdown.
This is Dragon with This Time!
Before they knew it, Dragon were Australia's #1 band.
And I'm talking about Dragon!
There didn't seem to be any transition period from sort of playing in some terrible place in Camperdown for mince, riding around in nice cars and getting awards for being a good band.
Late in 1977, Running Free delivered a monster hit.
April Sun in Cuba just sounds like a happy pop song. It's really about the 1957 chess championship where Kasparov is complaining about the April Sun in Cuba, you know, ruining his game.
By then, big success led to big excess.
The band sort of collectively gave drugs quite a good caning, and drugs gave quite a good caning to the band.
In 1978, Dragon released O Zambezi. Then their record company decided to break them in America.
The fallback. The engineer was over there, Mark was saying, you know, what more fallback? And then the guys down the side of the stage were going back to him and he'd go, oh, you know, well, okay.
Mark took it upon himself to announce to the Texans that we had heard that oral sex was illegal in the state, and what a bunch of wankers the Texans were.
The stuff started showering across the footlights, and Mark got up on the tables and he was there in this crucifixion pose with all this shit being thrown at him. And I look around and money's going back and forth, you know, if he's going to get shot or not. We get backstage and Mark says, what do you reckon? How we do?
In 1979, the unthinkable happened.
I still got fired. I was getting incredibly erratic by that stage.
He just got more and more wild, and we were really worried about him.
Very little joy left in it by the time the band got to an explosive state. You know, we just wanted to...
As his brother, I just couldn't stand how much damage he was doing to himself. You know, we should have stopped. But we went on for 8 months or something and then stopped.
After Mark launched a successful solo career, a couple of years later, Dragon rose again to pay off old debts.
There were people turning up to the gigs that was 15, 16 years old, and none were going, my God, these people know the words to the songs.
The thing about this band is that it always writes good pop songs.
They released the Body and the Beat album with hits all over it.
On the Countdown Awards, would you welcome Dragon?
Congratulations, platinum for Body and the Beat.
Soon, however, Robert Taylor left and Paul Hewson returned to New Zealand. After a while, the Hunter brothers were the only remaining Kiwis. But Dragon rocked on, releasing more big hit albums. At their peak, no one could match the musical might and power of Dragon.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to induct Dragon into the Aria Hall of Fame.
Wow. I'd like to thank Aria for this induction. It's a great honor to the band. I accept this on behalf of the 35 people who were in Dragon for the last 35 years, okay? We've got Robert Taylor, Kerry Jacobson and Al Mansfield here tonight. All great musicians and great songwriters. But very much here in spirit are Mark Hunter, Paul Hewson and Neil Storey. Yeah. When we moved to Australia in 1975, it became obvious that we needed some great songs. So as you heard, we sent a telegram to Paul saying fame and fortune awaits, and await it did for some years, including the fortune bit. Anyway, Paul wrote brilliant songs and he had a wicked sense of humour. Would you agree with that? Savage. And he just completely loved chess, wrestling, and he knew a hell of a lot about elephants. He knew stuff that you would never guess. Anyway, it is an honour. It is an understatement to say that Dragon had our ups and downs. We've risen like, you know, phoenix-like from the ashes a number of times, every decade it seems. And we've had our sublime moments. We've certainly had our ridiculous ones. If you like to check on YouTube, you can see them all. All our wardrobe malfunctions, everything. I wish Tommy and Doan could be here to share in this, and I'd like to thank them all for their work. Thanks to the managers, Sebastian Chase, you are here tonight, Steve White, for managing a completely unmanageable band, to CBS Records for getting the band off the ground, to Polygram and BMG and everyone else in the whole Body and the Beat eras. In fact, we got into bed with most record companies, mainly for one-night stands, but we did. To the producers, Peter Dawkins, Al Mansfield, who produced Rain, Kerry Taylor and Todd Rundgren, and to the outside songwriters like Joanna Piggott and Sharon O'Neill for their great songs. I'd like to mention Tony Grace, who got the band back on the road again just recently. It's just so great to be playing again. Thanks, man. Look, I wish Mark was here making this speech, and I don't know if he ever really understood the actual affection there was for him and for his work. So he would absolutely love this, I can tell you, and Paul would as well. This month is the 10th anniversary of his passing, and it's just great that he's being honoured here tonight with us. He was a fearless performer, an incredible singer, and I miss him like hell. We all do. So from me and Mark and all the guys, our thanks to you all for a great life in music.